Wisconsin beats Minnesota 20. I put 24. I think it was 28 to 14. Yeah, it was 28. Sorry, I'll fix that. But yeah, 28 to 14. Braelon Allen had a game, 2 touchdowns. What was it? 165 yards, 26 carries. Really just carried Wisconsin on his back in this one. Zach, what were your thoughts on the Wisconsin Minnesota game?
I'll keep it simple. I think we're seeing what Wisconsin could have been if Braelon Allen stayed healthy. I think they were, they pulled away in the second half at really strong running performance. Braelon Allen's a stud. I think Minnesota, I'm not advocating that PJ Fleck be fired, but I am starting to wonder, where does Minnesota go? Because the heart of their program, it was all John Michael Schmitz, Mo Ibrahim. We've been talking about their losses all year, and nobody's really stepped up, right? They've had some good running back performances with Newbin, but it hasn't been dominant. The offensive line is still messy. Kaliak Manis, I feel like hasn't gotten better over the course of the season. And I just don't know 5-7. I think PJ Fleck is hanging on because of 2019. And I feel like if your best season was 4 years ago, I feel like you're probably in trouble in the next year or two.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Let's finish talking about the game, and then I want to talk about PJ Fleck at the end. Connor, do you have any thoughts on the game?
Not many. It was kind of a snoozer for me, but I can't talk because, I'm an Iowa fan. And yeah, listen, we all know how
when
that
an
is.
Iowa fan is telling you your game was a snoozer.
Yeah, I can't talk. That's just hypocritical. But the reality is, I think this is kind of what I expected for the game to be. And we got exactly what we thought. I think Wisconsin was the slightly more physical team here going into it. And I think that their defense was just going to be giving Kaliak Manis a little bit more trouble than even some of the other teams in the Big Ten are used to giving him. So yeah, it was just it was pretty standard for a Big Ten game, a rivalry game. So I figured it would be a 1-score game, but hey, it is what it is. I think Minnesota's still going bowling, so shout out them.
Yeah, I think
Despite 5-7.
yeah. They're still able to go to a bowl. I forget how that all works out, but I got that notification on my phone. Yeah, no, I think that Minnesota, to me, what they needed to do in this game is they needed to come out with their hair on fire, really play for their coach, and really play for the bowl game in this one. And it just didn't happen. I mean, yeah, they came out, they scored, but then we're looking at punt, 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 punt after that, and then Wisconsin answers. They score at the end of the first. And then, with Minnesota, they kind of, came back a little bit there, but it was a 3-and-out, and then 3-and-out, and then they, another score. But at the end of the day, Wisconsin tied it up, and then it was just kind of, over from there. Wisconsin took over the game and really just kind of put Minnesota down, and there was nothing else they could do about it. So, hats off to Wisconsin. I hope it gets better for Minnesota, because I don't think this is where they want to be. Zach, you bring up PJ Fleck. Is it time to move on from him? So I'm just going to give you his year after year record. 2017 was the last time that they had a losing record, not including 2020, and that was PJ Fleck's first year. They were 5-7. 2018, 7-6. 2019, as you referenced, 11-2. Really good year for the Golden Gophers. 2020, 3-4. 2021, 9-4. 2022, 9-4. They finished second in the West both those years, won their bowl games, Guaranteed Rates Bowl, Pinstripe Bowl. PJ Fleck has never lost a bowl game at Minnesota, by the way, 4-0 in bowl games. And then this year, 5-7, fourth in the West. I mean, are we really expecting anything more from the Minnesota coach than to, hover around 10 wins every now and then? And then, really be around 10 wins more often than you have a losing season? Is that too big of expectations? I don't know. You guys tell me.
I don't know if it's that. And I think where I'm concerned is you had mentioned, are they actually playing for their coach? And are they playing with their hair on fire? And that's what concerns me is like the past few weeks, they've looked dead. And I'm not advocating that he's fired yet, but the thing that has constantly concerned me is he misses the layups. And I think that so what I mean is, he loses to Bowling Green when he gives Ohio State a great game, or he upsets Penn State, or and it's actually very similar to Mike Loxley probably at Maryland. Like I feel like he can challenge the big guys sometimes, but then he has these shockingly mind-numbing losses that you're like, what are you doing? And I don't know what to do with that, because like Minnesota's been worse. Tim Brewster, those years were awful. But I don't know. I feel very sensitive to like when coaches start their plateau and downward descent. And I feel that right now. Like, I just don't feel like he's trending up. I feel like the boat's taking on water right now.
Hard to row the boat when the boat's taking on water.
Yeah.
Connor, you're our Big Ten West liver. You know what it's like over there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, if you can't find a way to win the West, and obviously now it's done and away with, that is a little bit problematic in my eyes. I mean, obviously, we're all familiar with the lack of talent over on the West, we'll call it. And I don't know, man. I think that you got to win those rivalry games. To be fair, he did beat Kirk Ferentz this year, but that was for the first time in I think like 6 or 7 years. I mean, that's not impressive.
It's the 7th year, so 1 in 6?
Yeah, 1 in 6. That's not very great. I mean, I don't think he's beaten Wisconsin all that many times. I think his first time was relatively recently. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like how Ohio State fans feel about like Ryan Day. I'd imagine that Minnesota fans feel about PJ Fleck. You got to start winning those rivalry games. Obviously, I think they're going to lose a couple, given how much talent is in the Big Ten. But yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be calling for heads yet, but it is certainly getting to that point. I think that's a good point you make there about him just being on a plateau. I do see that with him here, and I think that there is a slight call for worry.
I have a friend who used to be a GA in the Big Ten, and he was talking to another guy who used to work over at Minnesota a couple years ago, and he was telling me that his friend, kind of his biggest concern with PJ Fleck since he got to know him is like, this guy is charismatic, this guy is a really big motivator, but eventually that stuff wears off. Like that stuff doesn't last forever. You kind of have to find new ways to motivate people. And luckily for PJ Fleck, you cycle through players every 4 years, right? Or every 5 years sometimes. So you can kind of get away with kind of doing the same motivational stuff. And I have to wonder, maybe in this new age of college football where we have guys who are in their 5th, 6th, 7th year, I don't know how many guys like that Minnesota has, but is some of that motivational row the boat stuff, some of that stuff, like, is that wearing off on some of those guys? Is that why we're seeing maybe not the most, inspired Minnesota team that we've ever seen? I meant to look up those numbers to figure out how many like seniors and super seniors and stuff like that they have, but that could be my only guess, because I feel like PJ Fleck is a big time motivator guy, and it just seems unusual that he would start his very first season there 5-7, 7 years ago. And then we find ourselves after 2 9-4 seasons right back to 5-7. Seems weird to me, but Thanks for listening to the Big Ten Huddle. Please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that. If this was your first time listening, we are the Big Ten Huddle. We cover all things Big Ten football and basketball. We have a long episode every Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night, all at 9 o'clock. So come in, check us out, get in the chat, let us know what you're thinking. We would love to have you join us and learn more about the Big Ten.